Okay, so in this lesson, we're going to continue talking about graphs of polynomials. So again, we've talked about this before, but we want to quickly review this. Polynomials, the graphs of polynomials have a lot of key parts that we can identify if we see the graph. So the first things that we can identify are what we call relative maximums, right? So a relative maximum is any time the graph reaches the top of a hill and goes back down, right? So this point would be what we call a relative maximum. So it's any time you go to the top of a hill. On the other hand, we have what we call a relative minimum. A relative minimum is the opposite. If we have a U shape or like a valley, right? So that's when we have like the bottom of a valley. And then a lot of times graphs are going to have multiple relative maximums and multiple relative minimums. The absolute maximum is the highest max, right? So you might have multiple relative maximums, but the absolute max is the highest one. Similarly, the absolute minimum is the lowest minimum. Okay, so in your notes on this side, we're going to draw a graph. And I want you to draw it very similarly to me because we're going to annotate it. And so I just want it to look very similar to mine. And you're going to need two colors, so make sure that you do that. Oh gosh, it's looking a little weird. Let me do this again. So hopefully you notice that this is a W shape, which means it is a fourth degree polynomial, right? So again, we can identify the relative maximums and the relative minimums. So let's start by identifying the relative maximums. So relative maximums, remember, are this kind of like top of a hill. So if you notice, we are at the top of the hill only one place. So this is what we would call our relative max. But since it's our only max, right, there's no other top of the hill, it's also our absolute max. It's both. And then we have our minimums. The minimums are like bottom of the valley or like U shape, right? So we have two relative minimums. So this is a relative min and this is a relative min. But one of them is lower than the other, and that's this one. So this is also our absolute min, okay? And then with that, we can also identify a bunch of things that you should already know, right? For example, this is our y-intercept, and this is our x-intercept, and this is also our x-intercept, right? And then you should know how to identify when it's increasing or decreasing. So remember, increasing, so we always go from left to right. So I'm going to make increasing purple for me. Again, you should grab two colors or, I don't know, a pen or something. And decreasing is going to be pink for me. So again, we're starting with the left side. So we're starting over here. So if we trace the graph, we start by going down. So we start by decreasing, 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 decreasing until we hit the relative minimum. Then we're increasing, 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 increasing. Then we're decreasing, 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 decreasing. And then lastly, we will be increasing all the way till the end, okay? So with this information now, you should be able to hopefully sketch some graphs. So let's look at this problem right here. So you are being asked to sketch a third degree polynomial with a 0 at -3. It has a relative minimum at 0.3 and a maximum at -1.5. Okay, so this is a lot of information, so I'm just going to organize this. So we know it's third degree, which means it's going to have some sort of like this kind of shape. We know there's a 0 at -3. We know there's a min at 0.3. And if you remember, if we look back here to what a minimum looks like, it looks like this, right? And then we have a max at -1.5. And if you remember, a maximum looks like this. So let's sketch this, right? We're not expecting this to be perfect. We're just doing our best. So first thing I'm going to start with is the 0. So the 0 is at -3. Then I'm going to plot my mins and max. So I have a min at 0.3. So I'm going to decide that like this is 0.3 And since it's a minimum, I know it's gonna look something like this, right? It's gonna be like an upwards U. And then we have a max at -1, 5. So -1 is gonna be in between the -3 and, you know, that 0. So -1, 5, I'm gonna say is like somewhere up here, right? Just has to make a little bit of sense. And it's a maximum, which means it's gonna be the upside down U, right? And so now you can kind of see everything coming together. It's not expected to be perfect, but you are expected to sort of sketch it like this, okay? So at this point, you're doing practice in your packet. There's no delta math for this part yet, and then you're gonna watch the second video.